Ladies and gentlemen, this is your reaction. This is Legends Summarize Atlantis with the channel only Sarcastic production. Don't get too excited, Plato's pretty dry. Get it? But seriously. Yeah, I didn't get it. What does she mean by that? Wouldn't it be fun if the conspiracy algorithm picked this one up? Okay, no, the ending song is in the Under the Sea. I already did it twice. Yeah, Atlantis, a legendary sunken city. I mean, people still have this, hope that one day we might discover it. Which obviously there's no way in hell we can miss a damn sunken city, but still, yeah, this is gonna be a fun video. I wrote quite a few already Sarcastic production videos already. If you haven't seen them, check out the cards. There's a playlist I wrote for it. Already Sarcastic production reactions, something like that. Upload lots of videos in 24 hours, so people don't get notification of things. So check out the playlist. You might have missed some videos. Check out the playlist too, like CGP Grey, Real Life Lore, Gus Gazard in a Nutshell, Internet Historian, and yeah, let's watch this one.
Man, I think everyone loves Atlantis. Just the concept is so compelling and fun. An ancient magical civilization lost at the bottom of the ocean? Where do I sign up? I think the premise is inherently fun because it taps into our primal, deep-rooted desire to explore and discover new incredible things. We want ancient trap-filled temples and hidden stockpiles of pirate treasure and maybe a couple bizarrely intricate puzzles thrown in for flavor. We love the sci-fi vision of outer space because we imagine it full of incredible new
It would be so ridiculous. What if we do find some kind of an ancient structure somewhere undersea or wherever? It doesn't necessarily have to be Atlantis. And there are actually puzzles like that. Like how we play in games and how there is Indiana Jones style puzzles. And people will be like, look at that, we were right.
worlds and new civilizations just waiting to be sought out through convenient lightspeed drives or stargates or other means of bypassing that frustrating speed of light limitation. And I think we love Atlantis for the same reason. A fantasy land so close to home, but so alien. Something we could go out and find. As a bonus, it's also a fantastic hubris story. Atlantis is the go-to example these days for a great civilization brought to ruin by its own hubristic decadence. I mean, if you're not into Rome. Most commonly, it's assigned some sort of great power or technological supremacy that it royally screws up and sinks into the ocean as a result. Doesn't really get more brought to ruin than that. But narrative appeal aside, the greatest charm of the story of Atlantis is that it's so close to home. It's not an alien civilization or another dimension. It's here in our ocean. And, it's not the least plausible thing in the world. I mean, it took us till 2005 to finally snap a photo of a real live giant squid. There's all kinds of horrifying crap down there, and that's just the stuff we've been able to find. As of 2019, over...
Yeah, see the thing with the giant squid, I think that was the video I saw where they found it, some boat, then some kind of lightning hit or something like that happened, so one of the laptops got fried. But fortunately, the laptop that had the footage survived, so, we have the footage. Yeah, the thing with the giant squid thing is relative to a giant civilization that would be Atlantis, a giant city. Giant squid is not that much of a giant. It's small. So yes, something like giant squid we might not be able to detect and find in that sense, but a damn city that is sunken down, I'm pretty sure our echo detector and things like that will pick something up like that, like there's something there's a massive city, so there is no way in hell Atlantis is real anymore. So yeah,
over 80% of the oceans remain unexplored. Is it so hard to believe that there could be a lost civilization slumbering below the waves? Alright, calm down there, Lovecraft, because unfortunately, it is that hard to believe. So let's talk about Plato. The very first reference to the lost city of Atlantis comes to us courtesy of Plato around 360 BC. In his philosophical dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, Plato claims to be recounting the events of the Athenian lawgiver and part-time poet Solon's visit to Egypt sometime in the 580s BC. According to Plato, according to Solon, he translated ancient Egyptian records recounting events that happened 9,000 years earlier, and that's where he found all this stuff about Atlantis. First problem, there's no evidence these records ever existed, so Plato seems to have pulled all his evidence for these dialogues straight out his own.
Solon's visit to Egypt really happened, but there's no sign of any records of Atlantis and no prior references in either Greek or Egyptian writing stories. Yeah, but records could have been, lost or something. He did visit Egypt, so...
Plato seems to have pulled all his evidence for these dialogues straight out his own ass. But don't worry, there's way bigger problems to come. So the purpose of these dialogues is to explain why Athens is really cool and decadence is bad, and the evidence provided is that this one time, 9,000 years ago, Athens repelled an invasion from a huge island nation out in the Atlantic. Second problem, Athens had only existed for a few centuries at this point, and 9,000 years prior, people were still banging rocks together and trying to domesticate goats. Not exactly a good millennium for a golden age of civilization. The dialogue lays out that the ancient Athenians were pure and virtuous and eschewed luxury in favor of a literally Spartan lifestyle of militant training and no personal belongings, because Plato thought Sparta's political structure was really cool, so he decided his fanfic version
Plato's like, look at those abs.
of ancient Athens would be an idealized version of modern Athens with the rad military class of Sparta thrown in for dopeness. Also, fun fact, none of Athens' weird attitudes towards women. Plato's legendary ancient Athens was completely egalitarian, even the military, though he did believe that while ancient women were equal to men, modern women were inherently less virtuous. Thanks, Plato. Your wokeness is appreciated. Anyway, Plato's main
Wokeness my ass. That's just so, the women today. Women used to be great. Nowadays women, they are just nowhere near close. That's his mentality there.
philosophy in the dialogues is that luxury bad, no luxury good. Plato believed that luxury was an inherently corruptive influence that drove people to become less virtuous, and he decided to illustrate this really directly with his Athens versus Atlantis conflict. See, while Athens was off being all rad and Spartan, Atlantis had a very different experience. The root premise of this narrative is that back in the old days, the gods divvied up the world, and while Athena got the region of Athens, Poseidon got the island of Atlantis, a huge, beautiful, resource-rich island nation with everything a budding civilization could ask for. The island is described as being bigger than Libya and Anatolia combined, which, judging by the size of modern-day Anatolia, makes it bigger than Texas, but not by much. There, Poseidon fell in love with a mortal woman, Cleito, and they had a whole bunch of kids, 5 sets of twin boys, with the eldest named Atlas. And by the way, Plato takes a hot minute to assure us that while all the names he provides are distinctively Greek, these names are translations Solon provided based on the original meaning of the non-Greek names that he derived from the original Egyptian records, which again don't exist. That's why this very much not Greek invading empire sounds so Greek, and also implies that fictional versions of Atlantis shouldn't look nearly as Greco-Roman as they frequently do. Anyway, while Poseidon made a walled-off temple paradise for Cleito,
Well, Plato put more effort into his storytelling there, isn't it? I mean, nobody in the Hollywood thinks of this like, why are these Romans suddenly speaking English, British accent and English? Nobody cares about that. But Plato's like, people might suspect I'm boasting, so let's put story there, like why their name sounds like, yeah.
he also started divvying up the island among his demigod children. Atlantis got divided into 10 parts, with the central region ruled by Atlas, king of Atlantis, and the other 9 regions ruled separately by his brothers. They put down some rules for each other, most importantly that if any one of them attacked another, all the other kings and princes had to come defend the injured party. This was supposed to keep things in line and prevent Atlantis from tearing itself apart, because it worked so well when they tried it with Helen of Troy. Now, there's a pretty nifty description of the physical layout and appearance of Atlantis, but what Plato wants us to focus on is not any of his rad world building, it's the fact that these 10 divine kings produce 10 lineages of kings, but the farther we go down the generations, the less divine these kings become. The first generation is half god, the second is 1/4, etc. And once the divinity thins out and the bloodline gets human enough, their growing human nature makes them vulnerable to the, according to Plato, inherently corruptive nature of their incredibly luxurious lifestyle. So their very rich lifestyle gradually transitions into a colonialist and exploitative lifestyle, and they start trying to invade the Mediterranean, where they conquer their way through almost everything but find themselves stymied by Athens and their sweet, badass, totally original do not steal military society. Unfortunately, we're
Yeah, because it's the humans who becomes petty and exploitative. Gods are not like that. Greek gods are surely like that. They are not petty. They are not exploitative. They don't seek revenges and plot things. Yeah.
missing the end of the second dialogue, but while we don't know exactly what happens, if we read between the lines and refer back to the first dialogue's summary of the events, we infer that Zeus notices the evil corruption of the kings of Atlantis, calls a meeting of the Olympians, and tells Poseidon to do something about it. So Poseidon responds by striking Atlantis with a devastating earthquake, sinking the entire island in a single night. Now, the overt message of this dialogue
Zeus is like, what the fuck? Oh, Poseidon, come here. Like, what's that? Poseidon's like, I'll fix it. Wham! There you go, it's fixed.
was an attempt by Plato to demonstrate that wealth, luxury, and all the resources in the world, the kind of things empires typically seek out, will just make a people decadent and violent, and the real way to handle that kind of thing is to be more like Athens, specifically the Sparta part of Athens, not the imperialist part of Athens. The point of the story was that Atlantis had everything they'd ever need, but because they were human, and therefore flawed, they were consumed by vice and hubris and lost everything. It's pretty obviously an allegory meant to illustrate the inherent flaws of humanity, with an overt good example, ancient Athens with their simple lifestyle, and a bad example, Atlantis with their overwhelming power and luxury driving them to spiral into greed. Also, there's this little weird bit where Plato says that the sunken Atlantis formed a mud shoal west of the Strait of Gibraltar, and that's why it's impossible.
But afterwards, there occurred violent earthquakes and floods, and in a single day and night of misfortune, all your warlike men in a body sank into the earth, and the island of Atlantis in like manner disappeared in the depths of the sea. For which reason the sea in those parts is impassable and impenetrable, because there is a shoal of mud in the way, and this was caused by the subsidence of the island. Damn, the light is making it really hard to read. Plato's Timaeus dialogue.
Possible to sail out into the Atlantic? I did a bunch of Googling and asked Blue what the heck he was talking about, and basically Plato is totally making this up. There was never any mud shoal, and the Atlantic was always accessible from the Mediterranean. I don't know why he said that.
Honestly, sometimes Plato just likes to troll his readers. Keeps them on their toes, make sure they're paying attention. You get it.
Yeah, that checks out. Now, while Plato
Or maybe he just lies to make things spicy.
seems to have made up Atlantis out of whole cloth, there was a very noteworthy event that may have influenced some of the details he included. Specifically, the Minoan Eruption, a catastrophic volcanic eruption that had occurred about 1,000 years prior on the island of Thera, modern-day Santorini. The Minoan Eruption devastated the island, wiping out many settlements and dropping huge chunks of the island into the sea. This event was so cataclysmic, the consequences might have been felt as far as China, where some records from the 1600s BC describe a volcanic winter that caused crop failure and unseasonably cold weather in July. So when Plato describes an island nation devastated,
That also fucked up the Crete civilization, right? I'm pretty sure I remember watching in some of the videos that explosion, effed up the, Crete civilization of the time, which was thriving.
by a natural disaster so severe it collapses into the sea, the contemporary Greek listener would be like, oh damn, just like what happened to Santorini. It's like when modern-day disaster movies evoke Pompeii or the Titanic. So the thing is, even though the story was pretty clearly allegorical, and in fact Plato had a well-documented habit of making up entire civilizations as thought experiments, which is very obvious if you look at the rest of Plato's writing for context, a lot of contemporary writers thought he was being literal, and so was born the search for Atlantis. See, because Plato described everything about this island, including literally where it was located, but Atlantis isn't actually there. But everyone still really liked the idea of Atlantis, so they decided, hey, so Atlantis isn't where Plato said it was, but instead of assuming, like, maybe he just made it up as an allegory and it's supposed to be a big metaphor or something, what if we suppose everything he said about it was literally true, except where it's physically located?
See, that's the thing. Just even the science was like that. People just wrote a scientific paper and they're like, oh, there you go. That's a scientific fact now because I wrote a paper about it. Just a few centuries ago, people are like, you know what? If you're going to write a scientific paper, you better, give some kind of references and evidence to back that up. And people should do the experiments to come with the same conclusion if we are going to take this as a theory. But before that time, people like just philosopher basically just wrote the papers. You're supposed to take that literally because the mentality was the man is saying, he basically, remember some guy saying this or, found some writings about it which he translated. So take the man for his word. That kind of mentality was back then. People didn't ask for proofs. So Plato said it, so it must be there. Let's find it more.
Yeah. Remember, this is an island bigger than Texas, roughly twice as big as Spain. Not many places for an island like that to hide. But still, the base concept fascinated people, so all kinds of real-world locations have been proposed, including one that theorizes that Atlantis is Troy? What? You guys know that's not underwater, right? Anyway,
Troy is not even an island.
Search for Atlantis has been a popular subject since Plato first came up with it, with new theories and possible locations turning up every time we trip over some new and interesting geographical feature. So imagine how stoked everybody was when in the 1500s they sailed really far into the Atlantic and found an enormous brand new landmass. It was beautiful, rich in resources, and America. It was America. Oops. So while some people are still trying to find the real Atlantis, and really, best of luck to you, send me pictures if you get them, the rest of us are mostly content to use it exclusively as a really fun fictional setting. And while Atlantis' base story is good on its own, there are a few common changes people like to do when integrating it into a modern story or setting. Change number one usually removes the war. And since that was kind of the whole point of the dialogue, I'm sure Plato's spinning in his grave about it, but since the war story binds Atlantis very strongly to this fictionalized version of super ancient Athens, usually writers will remove the Atlantis declares war on the rest of the world part and just focus on the Atlantis gets too decadent bit. This makes makes a more versatile setting without tying it too strongly to any specific place. Similarly, Atlantis is frequently credited with having some kind of incredibly advanced technology or magic. This is, bizarrely, because in the dialogues, Atlantis is described as having an excess of orichalcum, a mythical reddish metal that was described as being slightly less valuable than gold. Now, nobody cares about the metal part, but orichalcum makes a very convenient name for any random magical element you want it to be. With this small change, orichalcum becomes a do-anything MacGuffin, and Atlantis becomes a civilization living large thanks to the properties of a magical material they have in excess. And that very easily segues into change number 3. Instead of being destroyed by the gods, Atlantis crumbles into the sea because of some direct fault of the Atlanteans. And frequently, this is portrayed as some kind of magical consequence of using too much MacGuffin metal. But some
Yeah, it's just simple mentality, so one civilization was so advanced, they had some technology, they had some kind of ore that was had great properties, they abused it, and that became their downfall, that kind of mentality. That's the philosophy people even use in Hollywood movies when they describe lots of things. Even that's kind of thing people use in some kind of an alien setting if somebody creates it. Like there was a massive alien civilization, they were really advanced, they had this material or something, they abused it, and now there's just remnants of the civilization left. Nobody else everybody is destroyed or something like that. Their technology was their downfall, something like that.
Sometimes it's technological failure, a natural disaster, or even a deliberate move on the part of the Atlanteans. Which brings me to change number 4, Atlantis surviving under the sea, sometimes even rebuilding itself better than before. This one's really popular because it makes for a more interesting story. Sunken City, pretty rad. Sunken City full of magic fish people, super rad. Unless you're blue and you have thalassophobia and you can't watch Aquaman on a big screen because you'd literally rather die. Help me tell him it's good, guys. It has Julie Andrews as a kaiju.
The deeper you go, the more nightmares there are. There's always a bigger fish!
Now, all these changes are intended to make Atlantis a more interesting and compelling setting for use in modern stories. By changing their big destructive flaw from warmongering to decadence, it heightens the message that Atlantis crumbled under the weight of its own hubris rather than Plato's message about the inherent corruptibility of humanity or whatever. Changing orichalcum from gold, but like red, to magical super element adds some fantastical elements to the narrative and gives us some wacky magical MacGuffins to play with. And making Atlantis survive under the sea produces a really fun set piece, an underwater civilization. Hell, Atlantis has basically become the archetype for underwater civilization, even though Plato's story ends way before anything like that happens. Sinking underwater was supposed to destroy it, not make it cooler. Now, while all this is really cool,
that's the thing with mythologies, isn't it? Somebody creates it and people put their creativity and modifies it, and that becomes the new version over time. So even though Plato didn't say a lot of those things, but Plato did create this Atlantis thing. People, modified it in a way that felt cool to them. They put their creativity in it and just created whole this thing that is carried over today, I guess. So yeah, mythologies and all this is made up anyway, so it's one made up thing got modified and become even more cooler made up thing. Why not? It's fun. We could create movies with it, we could create stories with it, people can have fun. Why not?
Cool. The one thing that confuses me is that everyone hell-bent on finding the real Atlantis seems to be ignoring the closest thing we have to a real Atlantis in terms of cool sunken civilization full of artifacts, and that is Doggerland. Now, Doggerland was an enormous landmass that connected modern-day Britain to the European mainland, all the way up to Denmark.
I saw that real-life lore video, and they said that, that there are even somebody's trying to plan to, dry out and introduce whole that land to connect Britain with Europe or something like that.
It had huge forests, tons of wildlife, and a thriving Mesolithic hunter-gatherer society. But the lower-lying areas were gradually submerged by the slowly rising sea levels as the last ice age came to a close around 11,000 years ago. Then, 8,200 years ago, a flash flood caused by an underwater landslide triggered a catastrophic tsunami that drowned the remains of Doggerland shockingly quickly, wiping out everything in the flooded areas and leading to its abandonment for the higher ground that now forms the UK. Fishing trawlers in the area are constantly dredging up Neolithic and Mesolithic tools embedded in the seafloor. Archaeologists have found Neanderthal and mammoth bones in the area, and there are perfectly preserved human footprints in a recently exposed petrified forest along the modern coastline. Basically, the modern UK is just the highest highlands of this ancient landmass, and the entire North Sea used to be a Mesolithic woodland paradise. Britannia rules the waves indeed. So yeah, if you're hell-bent on researching Atlantis, try giving Doggerland a shot. I mean, seriously, it's right by Britain. You can, get a hotel. Way more convenient than the Eye of the Sahara. Gotta say, I ran into a lot of surprises researching this, but the biggest one for me wasn't the Minoan Eruption or the imaginary...
Yeah, if you want to find lost civilizations and things like that, become an archaeologist, I guess. Yeah, right? Archaeologists, yeah. Just people, I don't know, that's one of those things out there kind of thing that people are trying to do, but people are thinking of, drying out that area so that land becomes, I guess, accessible again. That's not the worst idea. I mean, It was, there will be lots of history there, like we're already finding out. Yeah, more land. It's always good to have more land.
Mud Shoal or Britlantis, or even the fact that Atlantis is canonically a completely different civilization than ancient Greece and people really shouldn't design it to look like underwater Greece. It's that Timaeus and Critias weren't just the names of Yu-Gi-Oh cards from the filler season about Atlantis. Also, that Yu-Gi-Oh knew more about Atlantis than I did. That one kinda stung. Going under.
Whoa, don't just... Oh, come on.
रिजल्ट आ गया
Oh, there we go. Here's another thing to consider. Many civilizations have stories about cataclysmic floods because many civilizations originated in river valleys where catastrophic floods were basically the only natural disaster. Yeah. Hope you guys like the underwater photo frame. I designed it to evoke the aesthetic of a middle school girl's mermaid themed birthday party. Yeah. Aquaman was seriously good, and it was almost all thanks to the visual design and world building. I love that every Atlantean kingdom had totally different kind of people. I'm still mad that they used the Dunwich horror instead of the shadow over Innsmouth for their Lovecraft Easter egg though. Dunwich horror, that's a Lovecraftian thing, right? So what so those Dunwich horror thing in the Fallout games, that's taken from Lovecraft thing. Man, I have seriously no knowledge about all the Lovecraft stories and things. Only Cthulhu, that's it. Something about Cthulhu and that game that was talked about before. Indie game, that was really good. Sunken City or something like that. That's it. I don't know much about that. I know Oli Sarcastic Production has a video on that, so I'm going to react to that. Because I really need to learn, because of everything I know a bit of about here and there, I'm familiar with somewhat, but Lovecraft thing is completely foreign to me. Yeah. And the plot was super generic, but honestly, who cares? It's a DC movie with a vibrant color palette, a hopeful message about love saving the world, and Julie Andrews as a kaiju. No part of it should have worked, and yet somehow here we are. Okay. Alright, permission to come aboard. Anyways, tell Blue to watch it. It's good.
I'm falling for.
Thank you to our patrons. Alright. Damn, this was good. Atlantis. Atlantis is just awesome. It was also in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, so I love it. Assassin's Creed is one of those games. I know people hate it nowadays, but I don't know why. I seriously don't know why. Because I like to think my way of seeing things is also like generally how public see things. But in this case, generally public hate the new Assassin's Creed, which I really don't understand, which surprises me. I understand it's not the way Assassin's Creed was at the start. It doesn't have to be just because it's Assassin's Creed. It's in the same universe, but it's different type of games. Now it's open world and things like that. I like the exploration. I like the detail. I like how, I learn about histories and old mythological type, even if all of them might not be accurate. Some of them are really accurate enough to get us some idea, I guess. So Assassin's Creed Origin, I love the old Egyptian thing, all the gods and things, how the pyramids looked, and how whole thing was, Alexandria, the city. I would never have experienced something like that in any way, any books or any watching any videos, but the game was really realistic enough for me. Odyssey was the same thing. So Assassin's Creed is basically utilizing the graphics, the advanced graphics we have to create this simulation type of world, which is really good. What's bad with that? So I love Assassin's Creed. I love that how Atlantis was a thing in Odyssey. So yeah. Alright people, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out the reaction, there's a link in the description. Check out the cards of the playlist. Check out the end cards, and I'll see you next time.